In this video, we're going to be completing the second part of this worksheet. So we're going to be color matching different colors for the grape to get those filled in. And then we're going to move on to this part of application where we're actually shading using those colors that we found to fill in the reference picture of the grape. So to get started, the first step is to find all the different colors and values that are going to match the grape here. The important part is trying to find the values that are going to match, not so much the hue, but the value should be the focus. The hue doesn't have to be perfect, as we can layer these to blend them together to create a better color match. But without accurate values, you're not going to be able to create dimension in whatever you're filling out. So make sure that you do find a full range of values. You could even bring in some deeper blues for some of those darker values, as that can mix together with a purple or even mixing together blue and red in order to create a nice deep purple. So think about all the different colors that potentially would match. What I like to do is pick up a color, hold it to my reference picture, kind of move it around to see, is it matching or fitting with any of these tones? Think about how different colors will look blended together, and really look for what areas they are going to fit, whether that is a light tone, medium tone, or shadow. So try to look through and find as many colors as you can. You don't have to use all of the colors that you're matching in this section. We're just now testing them out, seeing how they're going to look before filling them in for your application. So at this point, think about which colors worked well, which colors are not going to work well, or which colors didn't really match so much. And then what I did here was just lay them out going from light to dark, and then I'm going to create a gradient so I can see how this is going to look, how my colors are going to layer together, and kind of test things out as one final practice here before applying them into the reference picture. So starting out, when you get to your application worksheet, make sure that you're filling out all of the highlights. So start going from top to bottom, left to right. Try to shade in all of those lightest areas that are going to be completely white. So on these water droplets, each have 1 to 2 highlights. Make sure you're pressing nice and hard to get a good application of that white. Otherwise, it might not show up at the end when we go over it with the blending agent. And then once you have all of that white filled in, think about what is one of your lightest values that cover most of the entire area, and just lightly shade over top of everything. So even areas that are going to be completely white, as long as you put a nice thick coat of the white colored pencil down first, that will help to keep it white so you don't have to worry too much about that as you're working, which really helps in the long run because each individual water droplet is a lot of detail. So that would take a long time to have to shade around all of them. So having that white colored pencil down first is very important to make sure that those are going to still stay white. So now that I have that first lightest value shaded over top of everything, I'm going to start to bring in more of a medium tone. And I'm really looking at my reference picture for where these medium tones are found, where those darker values are, and starting to slowly build those medium tones into my darker values as I'm working, leaving those lightest areas light. So really lightly put a coat on top of that. There's not many areas that are completely bright or very saturated, vivid colors. So a lot of times I'm working with more desaturated tones. If you don't have a desaturated tone, remember to use the complementary color on top in order to desaturate and dull that color out. So now that I have this medium tone colored pencil filling in most of my medium toned areas along with those darkest shadows, I'm going to go in with another darker value. So again, I'm working from my lightest values that I have, fading down into my darkest values. So this is a dark purple that I'm working with. I'm looking at my reference picture to see where are those darkest areas that I can continue to layer and darken with this next darker value. If you're having trouble seeing those darkest areas, squint your eyes. But for the most part, it's going to be in the bottom right-hand corner is the darkest. And then in the middle of the grape, there's a few areas where I'm lightly shading. And then along the outside and around each of the water droplets, there's a dark outline. So I added in that darker purple. Now I'm building in more of a brighter purple in some of those lighter medium toned areas where the color is a little bit more saturated. So this is bringing in some more of that color. So remember that you should really be layering multiple colors. I would shoot for 5 to 6 colors throughout the entire grape here so that you're not just working with one light value, one medium tone, and one dark value. Work with as much as you can to layer in multiple values and blend those together to create your accurate colors. So now I'm working with a really deep purple going around the outside, again focused on those darkest areas, just continuing to darken them. So around the outside here, that bottom right hand corner, and then I'm starting to press a little bit harder as I go around the outside of each water droplet just to darken those a bit with this darkest hue. This is a nice desaturated hue as it is, so I don't really have to worry about going over top with a complementary color to desaturate it. But I'm going around those water droplets, working in this bottom right-hand corner to continue to darken that value, looking at how the darkest value fades into my lighter value. And then there's some of those water spots on the grape that are dark throughout that I'm continuing to layer. And just looking back and forth quickly to see if anything jumps out that's different that needs to be adjusted. And again, in some of those medium toned areas, so in this upper right hand corner of the grape, the colors are a little bit more vibrant. So this is where you can bring in some of those lighter purples and even a little bit of pink that can really brighten up that area, make it a little bit more vivid as you fade into the medium tones. And just continuing to layer those dark values. You'll see I'm just switching colored pencils often. I'm slowly starting to press harder in order to burnish the color, but still over top of those water droplets where I had the white colored pencil, I don't want to press really hard. Otherwise, that color is not going to come through as much. So now, even though I'm not done adding details and I'm not done layering color, I'm still going to bring in my blending agent. So for my blending agent, I'm working with olive oil on a Q-tip and just doing small circles with this in order to blend everything out. And then this is going to bring out the white areas that I did the white colored pencil on top of. Now you'll notice some of those white highlights are a little bit choppy and harsh, so we will have to go over top of them just to fade them a bit. But it's really nice because I didn't have to worry about where I was shading before on top of the water droplets. I was able to keep those white so that I can go back in and adjust them as I go with an additional layer. So I'm continuing those small circles with the Q-tip on top of everything, blending all of those colors out so that I'm able to add a top layer of detail, just really refining my color and bringing in the detail as I'm working. So I'm going over top of some of those highlights to soften them a bit. I can even use the white colored pencil to blend areas on top and burnish them a little bit more. I'm focused on really going around with the darkest color to build that up. So I'm working in that bottom right hand corner. And now I'm really pressing hard, using those small circles to blend everything together at this point. So take your time, work in multiple layers, use multiple colors, focus on finding areas of highlight, medium tones, and shadows, and making sure that the hue and value that you're working with really match those values in order to create contrast and dimension throughout the entire piece. So I'm just bringing in a little bit more of that medium tone to really saturate the color here. And then I'll work in a little bit of the highlights to blend those so they're not as harsh and continue to fade that color into my highlight. So here's the finished result for the most part. Up to you if you want to go through and add the background color for now, but since it's just practice, the focus can be on the grape alone. Like I said before, layer your values, layer your colors, and really focus on creating contrast and detail throughout.